The maid was sleeping outside her Mafia boss's gate in the pouring rain, drenched and desperate. When he found her there past midnight, she whispered through tears that they'd destroyed her brother over a lie. What the maid didn't know, her boss was a powerful man who hadn't trusted anyone in years. And she was about to become the only person he couldn't afford to lose. The rain came down like bullets on the windshield. Giovanni Russo's black Mercedes crawled through the Chicago streets, wipers working overtime against the storm. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, not from the weather, but from the meeting he'd just left. 3 hours of listening to his capos argue about territory, about loyalty, about blood. Always blood. He was tired. 52 years old, and tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. The iron gates of his Kenilworth mansion came into view, barely visible through the downpour. Giovanni pressed the remote, watching the gates begin their slow swing inward. That's when his headlights caught something that made him slam the brakes. A person, huddled against the fence like a discarded coat. Giovanni's hand went instinctively to the gun in his jacket. In his world, nothing at your gate past midnight meant anything good. He killed the engine, grabbed his umbrella, and stepped out into the rain. As he got closer, his chest tightened. He recognized the dark hair, even soaked and plastered against her face.
Rosa?
Rosa Alvarez didn't move. His housemaid, the quiet woman who'd been cleaning his home for 3 years, was curled on the wet pavement in her street clothes, arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes were open but distant, red-rimmed and hollow. Jesus Christ, Rosa, Giovanni crouched beside her, holding the umbrella over both of them. What are you doing out here? She blinked slowly, as if just realizing he was there. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible over the rain. They fired my brother. Giovanni's mind raced. Brother. Mechanic. The garage. Carlos. They said he stole from you, Rosa's voice cracked. Mr. Russo, my brother's not a thief. He's not. But they fired him, and now, she pressed her palms against her eyes. Now we can't pay for my mother's medication. She has cancer, and the insurance won't cover the new treatment, and Carlos was working double shifts to help, and… Stop, Giovanni held up a hand. The rain hammered against his umbrella. Who told you Carlos stole from me? Mr. Marino, the new garage manager. He called Carlos into the office yesterday, showed him security footage, said auto parts were missing. $10,000 worth. He said you ordered Carlos arrested, that the police were coming, so Carlos should just leave. Something cold settled in Giovanni's gut. Frank Marino had been managing the garage for 6 months. Came highly recommended by one of Giovanni's business partners. But Giovanni hadn't ordered anyone arrested. He hadn't even been told about missing parts. Get up, Giovanni said, extending his hand. Rosa looked at him like he'd spoken another language. I said get up. You're soaked through. You'll catch pneumonia. When she didn't move, Giovanni's voice hardened. Not cruel, but commanding.
Rosa, now.
She took his hand. Her fingers were ice cold. Giovanni led her through the gates, past the fountain with its stone lions, up the marble steps to the front door. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, appeared in the foyer, mouth falling open at the sight of Rosa dripping on the Persian rug. Get her dry clothes, Giovanni ordered.
And food.
Hot soup, bread, whatever's in the kitchen. Mr. Russo, it's 1 a.m. Then wake up the cook. Mrs. Chun disappeared. Giovanni guided Rosa to his study, a wood-paneled room lined with books he'd inherited but never read. He pointed to the leather chair by the fireplace.
Seat.
Rosa obeyed, perching on the edge like she might bolt any second.
Her teeth were chattering.
Giovanni poured 2 fingers of whiskey and pressed the glass into her hands. Drink. I don't. It's not a request.
She drank. Coughed.
Drank again. Giovanni settled into the chair across from her, studying her face. Rosa was 31, maybe 32. Pretty in an understated way, with intelligent eyes that usually stayed focused on her work. In 3 years, They'd barely spoken beyond good morning and thank you. She cleaned, she left, she never asked questions. That was precisely why he trusted her. Tell me exactly what Marino said, Giovanni commanded. Rosa wrapped both hands around the glass, gathering herself. Carlos called me yesterday afternoon. He was crying. I've never heard him cry, not since we were kids. He said Marino showed him footage from the security cameras. 3 different times Carlos was caught taking parts from the inventory. Brake pads, engine components, expensive stuff. Marino said the evidence was clear, that you were furious, that if Carlos didn't resign immediately and disappear, you'd make an example of him. An example, Giovanni repeated slowly. That's what he said. Those exact words. Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. Mr. Russo, I know what you are. Everyone knows what you are. My brother was terrified. He left town last night. I don't even know where he is. Giovanni stood and walked to his desk. He picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. Sal, it's me. I need you to pull security footage from the North Shore garage. Everything from the past 2 weeks. He paused. I don't care what time it is. I need it within the hour. Another pause. And Sal? Don't tell Marino. Don't tell anyone. He hung up and turned back to Rosa. This footage Marino showed your brother. Did Carlos see it himself, or did Marino just describe it? Rosa frowned, thinking. Marino had it on his computer, but Carlos said the angle was weird. Like the camera was far away. He couldn't see his own face clearly, just someone in his work jacket. The cold feeling in Giovanni's gut turned to ice. He'd been in this business long enough to know a setup when he saw one. The question was why. Carlos Alvarez was nobody, a decent mechanic, quiet, never caused problems. What was the point of framing him? Unless Carlos wasn't the point. Giovanni looked at Rosa, really looked at her. She'd been in his home for 3 years. She knew his schedule, his routines, where he kept his personal files. She'd seen people come and go, heard conversations through doors. Rosa, he said carefully, has anyone ever asked you questions about me? Her eyes widened.
What? No.
Never. About my business? My meetings? Who visits the house? Mr. Russo, I swear. I'm not accusing you. Giovanni held up a hand. I'm asking if anyone's tried to use you. To get information. Rosa shook her head firmly.
No one.
I don't talk about my work, not even to Carlos. That's the rule you gave me when I was hired, remember? Discretion or dismissal. Giovanni did remember. It was the same rule he gave everyone who entered his private space. Mrs. Chun returned with a tray, soup, bread, cheese, a pot of tea. Behind her came Maria, one of the night maids, carrying folded clothes. They set everything down without a word and left quickly, closing the study door. Eat, Giovanni said. Rosa picked up the spoon with trembling hands. She took 1 sip of soup, then another. Then suddenly, she was crying again, silent tears streaming down her face as she ate like someone who'd forgotten what food tasted like. Giovanni turned away, giving her privacy. He walked to the window and stared out at the rain-soaked grounds. Beyond the walls, Chicago sprawled in the darkness, a city of secrets and lies. Someone was making a move against him. Someone smart enough to know that framing a nobody mechanic wouldn't get attention, but framing that mechanic to terrorize his sister, a sister who worked in Giovanni's home. That was a message. We can reach into your private life. We can make you doubt the people closest to you. We can make you look weak. The question was, who? Behind him, Rosa had stopped crying. Mr. Russo? Why are you helping me? Giovanni turned from the window. Because no one fires a man under my name without proof, he said. And because if someone's trying to play games with my people, I need to know who and why. He sat down across from her again, leaning forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're staying here tonight. Mrs. Chin will set up a guest room. Tomorrow morning, we're going to find your brother and bring him back. And then we're going to figure out what the hell Frank Marino is really up to. Rosa set down her spoon. Why would you do this for us? We're nobody to you. Giovanni met her eyes. You've cleaned my home for 3 years. You've never stolen, never gossiped, never asked for anything beyond your paycheck. You know what that makes you in my world." She shook her head. "Rare," Giovanni said. "Now finish your soup. Tomorrow we go to war." Giovanni didn't sleep. He spent the night in his study, watching security footage Sal had delivered on an encrypted drive. Frame by frame, he studied the North Shore garage. 3 weeks of recordings, thousands of hours compressed into suspicious moments. At 6 a.m., Rosa appeared in the doorway, wearing borrowed clothes from Maria's closet. Jeans and a sweater that hung loose on her smaller frame. Her eyes were puffy but clear. "You should be resting," Giovanni said without looking up from his screen. "I can't." Rosa stepped inside, hovering near the desk. "Did you find something?" Giovanni paused the footage. "Come here." She circled the desk until she stood beside him, close enough that he could smell the lavender soap from the guest bathroom. He pointed at the screen, a grainy image of someone in a mechanic's jacket reaching for a shelf in the parts room. "This is what Marino would have shown your brother. Look at the timestamp."
Rosalindin, squinting.
2:15 a.m. Carlos never works nights. Exactly. Giovanni clicked to another clip. "Here's your brother's actual time card from that day. He clocked out at 6 p.m., 14 minutes early, because he had to pick up your mother's prescription." "Then who's in the footage?" Giovanni zoomed in on the figure's hands. "Someone wearing Carlos's jacket. Notice the sleeves, too short. Your brother's what, 6'2"? 6'3". This person's 5'10", maybe 5'11". The jacket doesn't fit." Giovanni pulled up a third video. "And watch this." The footage showed the same figure leaving the parts room carrying a box. As they passed under a light, their face caught the camera for a split second before they adjusted their baseball cap.
Rosa gasped.
"That's not Carlos."
"That's..."
"Is that Marino?" Giovanni rewound and paused. "That's Frank Marino's nephew, Tommy. He's been working at the garage for 2 months. Same height as the person in the footage. Same build. Why would he frame Carlos?" Giovanni sat back in his leather chair, fingers steepled under his chin. "That's the $10,000 question." Literally, he turned to face her. "Rosa, I need you to tell me everything you know about your brother's work. Who he talked to, who he had problems with, anything unusual in the past few months." Rosa pulled up a chair and sat down, her brow furrowed in concentration. Carlos loved that job. He kept saying it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Good pay, benefits, he could help with mom's bills. He never complained about anyone. Never? She hesitated.
"Well..."
"There was one thing. About a month ago, he mentioned that Marino wanted him to do something strange." Giovanni leaned forward. "What kind of strange?" "Marino asked Carlos to install some new tracking systems in the luxury cars, the ones you export overseas. Carlos thought it was weird because the cars already had GPS. Marino said it was a backup system, that you wanted redundancy for the expensive vehicles." Every muscle in Giovanni's body went still. "Did Carlos install them?" He said no. "He told Marino he needed written authorization from you directly before he modified any export vehicles. That's the protocol, right? Nothing gets changed without your signature?" "That's the protocol," Giovanni said slowly. His mind was racing now, connecting dots that formed a picture he didn't like. "What did Marino say?" "He got angry. Told Carlos to stay in his lane, that he was questioning orders. But Carlos stood firm, said he wasn't risking his job over unsigned paperwork. After that, things got tense between them." Giovanni stood abruptly and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of blood orange. "Did your brother tell anyone else about this?" "Just me. He asked if he did the right thing." "He did." Giovanni turned back to her. "Rosa, those tracking devices, they weren't for security. Someone wants to monitor my shipments. Know exactly when and where my cars are moving."
"Why?"
"So they can intercept them, steal them, or worse, prove I'm using those shipments to move something other than cars." Giovanni's jaw tightened. "Your brother wouldn't play along, so they needed him gone. They framed him, scared him off, and cleared the way to install their spy equipment. Rosa stood up, her hands clenched into fists. Then we have to bring Carlos back. We have to clear his name and stop them. It's not that simple. Why not? You have the evidence right there. Evidence shows Tommy Marino stole the parts, yes.
But I don't know who else is involved.
I don't know if Frank Marino is working alone or if someone bigger is pulling strings. Giovanni moved to his desk and picked up his phone. If I move too fast, I tip them off. They'll destroy evidence, disappear, regroup. I need to know the full scope before I act. Rosa's voice rose. While you're being careful, my brother's hiding somewhere, terrified and broke, and my mother's running out of medication. We don't have time for careful. Lower your voice, Giovanni said quietly, but there was steel beneath the words. Rosa didn't lower her voice. You said no one fires a man under your name without proof. You said you'd help us. Was that a lie? Was last night just you feeling charitable? Giovanni closed the distance between them in 3 strides. He wasn't a tall man, but he carried the weight of 20 years commanding dangerous people. Rosa took an involuntary step back. I don't lie, Giovanni said, his voice low and hard. And I don't make promises I won't keep. But I also don't survive in my world by being reckless. If I publicly clear your brother right now, whoever's behind this will know I'm onto them. They'll adjust. They'll cover their tracks. And then I'll never find out who tried to infiltrate my operation. So Carlos is just collateral damage? Carlos is protected. Giovanni pulled out his phone and made a call.
Marco?
I need you to find someone. Carlos Alvarez, 34, worked at the North Shore garage. Last seen leaving town 2 nights ago. He paused. I don't care where he is. Find him. Bring him somewhere safe. Tell him his sister's with me, and he's not in trouble. Do it quietly. He hung up and looked at Rosa. My men will have him by tonight. He'll be safe. Your mother will get her medication delivered today, and you're going to help me figure out what the hell is really happening in that garage. Rosa's anger deflated slightly. Help you how? Giovanni walked back to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a thick folder. Frank Marino's employment file. His nephew's file. Security logs, inventory records, shipping manifests for the past 6 months. I need someone with fresh eyes to go through all of it and tell me what doesn't fit. I'm a housekeeper, not an investigator. You're someone who pays attention. Someone who notices when things are out of place. Giovanni held out the folder. Your brother noticed the tracking devices were wrong. Let's see what else your family can catch that my people missed. Rosa took the folder slowly. And if I find something, then you report directly to me. No one else. Not my managers, not my consigliera, not even Mrs. Chin. Giovanni's eyes locked onto hers. Can you do that? Rosa opened the folder, scanning the first page. Numbers, dates, names. I can try. Trying isn't good enough. Either you're with me on this, all the way, or you walk out that door right now with enough money to take care of your mother and forget we ever had this conversation.
It was a test.
Giovanni watched her face carefully, reading the emotions flickering across it. Fear, determination, anger, hope. Finally, Rosa closed the folder and met his eyes. I don't want your money, Mr. Russo. I want my brother's name cleared. I want whoever did this to pay. A small smile tugged at Giovanni's mouth.
Good.
Then we understand each other. He gestured toward the door. Mrs. Chin will set you up in the library. You'll work there until you find something, or until I tell you to stop. No one disturbs you. No one questions what you're doing. As far as anyone knows, you're reorganizing my files. Rosa moved toward the door, then stopped. Mr. Russo? Why are you really doing this? You could just fire Marino and his nephew. Write off the parts as a loss, move on. Giovanni poured himself a fresh cup of coffee from the pot on his desk. Because 20 years ago, someone framed my younger brother for something he didn't do. I believed the evidence. I didn't ask enough questions. He took a sip, the coffee bitter on his tongue. By the time I learned the truth, he was already dead. So when someone tries the same play in my house, I don't write it off. Rosa's expression softened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just find me answers. She nodded and left, the folder tucked under her arm. Giovanni returned to the window, watching the sun climb higher over the city. Somewhere out there, someone thought they were smart enough to outplay him. Thought they could sneak into his operation, plant their spies, steal his shipments. They were wrong. But they were also bold. And bold enemies were the most dangerous kind. Giovanni arrived at the North Shore garage at 7:30 a.m. unannounced. His Mercedes pulled into the employee lot, and he watched through tinted windows as mechanics froze mid-task, cigarettes dangling from lips, coffee cups suspended in air. Word spread like wildfire through the bay doors. The boss is here. Frank Marino appeared within 30 seconds, jogging across the lot while tucking in his shirt. He was a thick-necked man in his 40s with slicked-back hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. Mr. Russo, what an unexpected pleasure. If I'd known you were coming, I would've. You would've what, Frank? Giovanni stepped out of the car, buttoning his suit jacket. Cleaned up? Hidden something? Marino's smile faltered. No, sir, of course not. Just, proper preparation. Coffee, reports, whatever you needed. I need a walkthrough. Every bay, every office, every storage room. Giovanni started toward the main building without waiting for a response.
Now.
Marino scrambled to keep up, snapping his fingers at a young mechanic. Tommy, get over here. Tommy Marino emerged from under a Bentley, wiping grease from his hands. He was lean and nervous-looking, with the same weak chin as his uncle. When he saw Giovanni, his face went pale. Interesting, Giovanni thought. Tommy's been learning the business, Frank said, putting an arm around his nephew's shoulders. Sharp kid. Real asset to the team. I'm sure he is. Giovanni walked past them into the main garage. 20 cars in various states of repair or modification, Mercedes, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, all destined for overseas buyers willing to pay premium prices for American luxury with European sophistication. The mechanics worked in uncomfortable silence as Giovanni moved through the space, his eyes taking in every detail. He'd built this operation from nothing 15 years ago. Started with a small body shop and grew it into a multi-million-dollar export business. He knew every inch of this place. Or thought he did. Show me the parts room, Giovanni said. Frank led him to a locked door at the back of the garage. He fumbled with his keys, dropping them once before getting the door open. We keep strict inventory now. After the incident with Carlos Alvarez, I implemented new protocols. What kind of protocols? Double-checking every withdrawal, requiring 2 signatures for expensive parts, camera monitoring around the clock. Frank gestured to a new camera mounted in the corner. Can't be too careful these days.
Giovanni studied the camera.
This is new. Installed it last week. After we discovered the theft. Before or after you fired Carlos? Frank shifted his weight.
After.
As part of the upgraded security measures. Giovanni nodded slowly and walked into the parts room. Shelves lined with components, brake systems, engine parts, exhaust systems, all organized by make and model. He ran his finger along a shelf, checking inventory tags. Everything looked normal. Too normal. These brake pads, Giovanni said, pointing to a box marked for a Mercedes S-Class. When were they ordered? Frank pulled out his phone, scrolling through records. Looks like 2 weeks ago.
Why?
Giovanni picked up the box and examined it. The packaging was correct, the part numbers matched, but something felt off. He opened the box and removed one of the brake pads, weighing it in his hand. These are lighter than they should be. Sir? Giovanni turned the brake pad over, running his thumb along the edge. There. A seam that shouldn't be there. He pulled out his pocket knife and carefully pried at the seam. The brake pad split open. Inside, nestled in a hollow cavity, was a small electronic device the size of a quarter. LED lights blinked green. Frank's face went from confused to shocked. What the hell is that? Giovanni didn't answer. He grabbed another box, opened it, checked the parts. Same modification. He moved to the engine components, air filters, fuel injectors, oil pans. Every high-end part had been hollowed out and fitted with identical devices. "Someone's been busy," Giovanni said quietly. "I don't understand," Frank stammered. "Those parts came directly from our suppliers." "We didn't, Tommy. Did you see anything like this?" Tommy had gone from pale to gray. "No, Uncle Frank. I swear, I had no idea." Giovanni turned the device over in his palm, studying it. The design was familiar. Too familiar. He'd seen this exact type of tracking chip 5 years ago, when the Costello family had tried to monitor his shipment routes through the port of Chicago. They'd hidden the chips in shipping containers, tracked his movements for 3 months before he caught on. But the Costellos were gone now. He'd made sure of that. So, who was using their playbook? "Mr. Russo, I promise you, I didn't know." Frank's voice was rising, panic seeping through. "We've been using the same suppliers for years. If they're compromised—" "These weren't installed at the supplier level," Giovanni interrupted. "Look at the modification. This is hand-done, custom work. Someone here in this garage has been taking legitimate parts, hollowing them out, installing these chips, and putting them back on the shelves. That's impossible. I would have noticed." "Would you?" Giovanni fixed Frank with a hard stare. "You just told me you installed new cameras last week. These modifications took weeks of work, maybe months. Where were your cameras before?" Frank's mouth opened and closed like a fish.
We
had the standard system. But after Carlos. After you framed Carlos," Giovanni said it flatly, watching Frank's reaction. "I didn't frame anyone. Carlos was caught on camera." Carlos was convenient. Giovanni pocketed the tracking device. Someone needed a scapegoat, someone to take the fall and disappear so the real work could continue undisturbed. Carlos wouldn't play along with unauthorized modifications, so he had to go. Tommy made a small noise in the back of his throat. Giovanni turned to him. "You have something to say, Tommy?" "And no, sir." "Then why do you look like you're about to vomit?" "He's just upset," Frank cut in. "We all are. The idea that someone's been sabotaging your operation right under our noses." "Shut up, Frank." Giovanni moved closer to Tommy. "I've been doing this a long time, kid. I know what guilt looks like, what fear looks like. Right now, you're wearing both." Tommy's hands were shaking. "I didn't know what they were for. I swear I thought." "Tommy, don't say another word," Frank hissed. Giovanni held up a hand. "Let him talk." "I thought they were just better tracking systems," Tommy blurted out. "Like Uncle Frank said, backup GPS for the expensive cars. He told me Mr. Russo wanted them installed but didn't want to deal with the paperwork, that it was a rush job. I was just following orders." "From who?" Tommy looked at his uncle, terrified. "From me," Frank said, his voice hollow. "But I was following orders too." Giovanni's hand moved to his jacket. Not for his gun. Not yet, but the implication was clear. "Whose orders, Frank?" Frank's face was sweating now, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. "I got a call 3 months ago. Guy said he represented some investors, people interested in your export operation. Said they wanted to partner up, track the shipments to ensure quality control. They offered me 50 grand to facilitate the installations." "A name?" "He didn't give one. Just said to call him Mr. Blue." Giovanni felt a cold recognition slide down his spine. Mr. Blue. It was an old code name from the Chicago underworld, used by the Marinelli family when they wanted to make approaches without official contact. The Marinellis had been rivals for territory back in the 90s, before an uneasy truce divided the city between organizations. If they were making moves now, the truce was over. "How were you supposed to contact him?" Giovanni asked. "Burner phone. He'd call me. I'd never call him." Frank reached into his pocket slowly, pulling out a cheap flip phone. "This one. Last call was 2 days ago, after Carlos left. He wanted confirmation that the final batch of cars would ship out this week with the trackers installed." Giovanni took the phone. "How many cars have already shipped?" 12. To buyers in Dubai, Shanghai, and London. 12 luxury vehicles, each one worth $250,000, each one carrying Marinelli tracking devices. 12 perfect targets for hijacking, theft, or worse, evidence collection if the Marinellis were working with federal investigators. Giovanni's mind raced through possibilities, consequences, countermoves. This was bigger than a garage manager taking bribes. This was a coordinated assault on his entire operation. "Here's what's going to happen," Giovanni said, his voice cold and controlled. "Frank, you're going to call Mr. Blue and tell him everything is on schedule. Tommy, you're going to continue working here like nothing's wrong. Neither of you will mention this conversation to anyone, or I'll have you both buried in the lake by sundown. Understood?" Both men nodded frantically. "Good. Now get back to work. And Frank," Giovanni paused at the door, "the next time someone offers you 50 grand to betray me, I suggest you think about whether it's worth your life." He walked out of the garage into the morning sun, pulling out his phone. He had a name now, Mr. Blue, the Marinelli family's ghost. And he had a plan forming. But first he needed to talk to Rosa. She'd been right about her brother. She'd been right about the setup. He was beginning to think she might be right about a lot of things. Giovanni found Rosa in the library, surrounded by papers. She transformed his reading room into a command center, documents spread across the mahogany table in organized piles, sticky notes color-coded on the walls, a legal pad filled with her neat handwriting. She was so absorbed in a shipping manifest that she didn't hear him enter. "Find anything?" Giovanni asked. Rosa jumped, nearly knocking over her coffee.
Jesus, Mr. Russo.
"I didn't hear you come in." That was the point. He closed the door behind him and surveyed her work. "You've been busy. I've been trying to make sense of your filing system. No offense, but whoever organized these records was either drunk or deliberately trying to hide something." Rosa stood up, stretching her back. She'd been at it for hours. "Look at this." She handed him a spreadsheet covered in her annotations. "This is your parts inventory for the past 6 months. Notice anything strange?" Giovanni scanned the numbers. Everything looked normal. Orders placed, parts received, parts installed. "Walk me through it." "The orders match the installations, but the timing doesn't. See here." Rosa pointed to a line highlighted in yellow. "March 15th, you ordered 50 brake pad sets. They arrived March 18th. But according to the installation logs, only 35 sets were used over the next 2 months. So we had 15 sets in surplus. That's normal. Except those 15 sets show up as installed in May, in cars that had already shipped in April." Rosa flipped to another page. Same pattern with fuel injectors, air filters, even windshield wipers. Parts that should have been in surplus keep getting backdated into cars that left the country weeks earlier. Giovanni felt that familiar cold settling in his chest again. Someone's been doctoring the records. Not just doctoring, they're covering their tracks. They replace legitimate parts with modified ones, then adjust the paperwork so it looks like the modified parts were there all along. If anyone audits your inventory, everything balances perfectly. Rosa's eyes were bright with anger and excitement. "It's actually brilliant, if you ignore the fact that it's completely criminal." Giovanni set down the spreadsheet and looked at her properly. This wasn't the quiet housemaid who vacuumed his study. This was someone else, sharp, focused, furious. "How did you catch this?" "My accountants review these records every quarter." "Your accountants look at the final numbers. They check if the math adds up, not if the story makes sense." Rosa grabbed another document. "I used to help my father with his restaurant books before he died. He taught me that numbers can lie, but time can't. If a shipment left port on Tuesday, it can't have parts installed on Wednesday." "Your father was smart."
He was also paranoid.
"Said you had to assume everyone was stealing from you until you proved they weren't." Rosa's smile was sad. "Guess he was right." Giovanni walked to the window, hands in his pockets. Outside, the grounds crew was trimming hedges, oblivious to the small war being waged inside. "I went to the garage this morning. Found the tracking devices in the modified parts." Frank Marino admitted he was paid to install them. Rosa's head snapped up. "Paid by who?" "The Marinelli family. Old rivals of mine." Giovanni turned to face her. "They've been monitoring my shipments for months. 12 cars are already out there with their tracking chips. They know exactly where my vehicles are, where they're going, who's buying them. What are you going to do? That's the question. Giovanni moved to the table and sat down across from her. If I remove the devices and stop the operation, the Marinellis know I'm onto them. They'll disappear and regroup. If I let it continue, they could be planning anything: theft, blackmail, setting me up for federal charges. So, you need a third option. I need leverage. Information they don't know I have. Giovanni leaned back in his chair. Which brings me to you. Rosa's expression became guarded. What about me? Frank Marino thinks he's still got me fooled. His nephew thinks I bought their story about following orders. That gives me a narrow window to use them before the Marinellis realize I've flipped the script. He paused. But I need someone I can trust to help me track the real flow of information. Someone the Marinellis don't know exists. You want me to spy for you. I want you to keep doing what you're doing, finding the patterns, catching the lies. But deeper. I need to know every car that's shipped with tracking devices, every buyer, every route. I need to know what the Marinellis are really after. Rosa stood up and walked to the window, arms crossed.
For a long moment, she said nothing.
Giovanni waited. He'd learned long ago that silence was often the best negotiator. Finally, Rosa spoke. What happens to me when this is over? What do you mean? I mean, you're going to war with another crime family. People are going to get hurt, maybe killed. And I'll be right in the middle of it, knowing everything. She turned to face him. What happens to the person who knows too much about Giovanni Russo's business? It was a fair question. Most people in her position would be begging for protection, for money, for a way out. Instead, she was demanding the truth about her survival.
Giovanni respected that.
You have two choices, he said. Choice one, I pay you $100,000 right now. You take your mother, your brother, and you disappear. New city, new life, new names. You never speak about what you've seen here, and I never contact you again. And choice two, you stay. You help me end this. And when it's over, I clear your brother's name publicly. I give him his job back with double the salary and make him head mechanic. Your mother gets full medical coverage through my private insurance, best doctors, best treatment, whatever she needs. And you, Giovanni paused. You work for me directly. Not as a maid. As an analyst. Someone who keeps my books honest and catches the snakes before they bite. Rosa's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because in 3 years, you never asked me for anything. You did your job, kept your head down, earned your money honestly. Then when your family was threatened, you didn't run to my enemies or the police. You slept on the street outside my gate because you believed I was the only one who could help. Giovanni stood up. You know what that tells me? That you understand loyalty. Real loyalty. Not the kind bought with cash or fear, but the kind built on principle. You don't even know me. I know you better than you think. I know you worked 3 jobs after your father died to keep his restaurant open until you couldn't anymore. I know you send half your paycheck to your mother even when you can barely afford rent. I know Carlos looks up to you like you're his parent, not his sister. Giovanni moved closer. I run background checks on everyone who enters my home, Rosa. I knew your whole life story before you cleaned your first room. Rosa's jaw tightened. Then you know I don't trust people like you. People like me? People who hurt others for money. Who break laws like their suggestions. Who make people disappear. Her voice was steady, but hard. My father used to say the mob was a disease. That men like you poison everything you touch. Your father was right, Giovanni said quietly. We do poison things. We do hurt people. But you're wrong about one thing. We don't do it for money. We do it for power. For control. For survival in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. He met her eyes. And right now, your brother's survival depends on me. Your mother's survival depends on me. So you can hate what I am, Rosa. But you can't hate that I'm the only one who can help you. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. I don't want your money, Rosa said finally. I don't want to run, and I don't want a new life. I want my brother's name cleared. I want the people who did this to pay. And I want my mother to live long enough to see both those things happen. She stepped forward. So, if working for you makes that possible, then yes. I'll stay. I'll help you. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for them. Giovanni smiled, a real smile, not the calculating ones he showed his business partners. Fair enough. As long as you do it right, I don't care about your motivation. Then we have a deal. Rosa extended her hand. Giovanni shook it. Her grip was firm, her palm callous from work. One more thing. From now on, you report only to me. You don't trust anyone else in my organization, no matter what they say or who they claim to represent. If someone approaches you asking questions, you tell me immediately. Understood. Good. Giovanni released her hand and gestured to the papers spread across the table. Now show me everything you found. We have a lot of work to do, and the Marinellis won't wait forever to make their next move. Rosa sat back down and pulled over her legal pad. Where do you want to start? With the 12 cars that already shipped. If we can figure out what the Marinellis are planning for those vehicles, we can get ahead of whatever's coming next. Rosa nodded and began walking him through her findings, dates, destinations, buyer profiles. As she talked, Giovanni watched her face. She was animated now, confident in her analysis, unafraid to challenge his assumptions when she disagreed. She reminded him of someone. It took him a moment to realize who. Himself. 25 years ago, when he was still hungry and sharp and believed he could outsmart the whole world. Maybe she could. And maybe, for the first time in years, he'd found someone worth trusting. 3 days passed in a blur of documents and coffee. Rosa worked 16-hour shifts in the library, breaking only when Mrs. Chun insisted she eat something. Giovanni brought her files from his safe, contracts, wire transfers, communication logs he'd never shown anyone outside his inner circle. He watched her absorb information like a sponge, connecting pieces he'd thought were unrelated. On the 4th morning, she found it. Mr. Russo, Rosa's voice was tight when she called him at 6 a.m. You need to see this.
Now.
Giovanni arrived in the library 15 minutes later, still buttoning his shirt. Rosa looked like she hadn't slept, eyes bloodshot, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. This better be good, Giovanni said. Rosa slid a ledger across the table. Remember how I said the parts inventory didn't match the installation dates? Yes. I thought it was just sloppy record-keeping or deliberate confusion to cover the tracking devices. But it's more than that. She opened the ledger to a page marked with a dozen sticky notes. These aren't just modified parts. These are phantom purchases. Giovanni sat down and studied the entries. Explain. Look at April 23rd. Your garage ordered $3,000 in brake components from Mitchell Auto Supply. The order was approved, paid for, received, and installed. Everything documented perfectly. So, I called Mitchell Auto Supply yesterday, pretending to be your accountant verifying records for tax purposes. They have no record of selling you anything on April 23rd. Rosa pulled out her phone and showed him her notes. Or May 6th. Or June 12th. In fact, they haven't sold you parts in over 8 months. They dropped you as a client last year because of, and I quote, payment processing irregularities. Giovanni's eyes narrowed. Someone's been creating fake purchases. Not just fake purchases. Look at the payment records. Rosa flipped to another section, her finger tracing down a column of numbers. Every phantom purchase was paid through wire transfer to an account at Chicago Metro Bank. Same account number, different vendor names. How much total? Rosa had already calculated it. In 6 months? $217,000. Giovanni sat back, processing. Someone inside his organization had been siphoning money, disguising it as legitimate parts purchases, funneling it to a single account. Did you trace the account? I tried. Chicago Metro wouldn't give me information without a warrant or account holder authorization. But I found something else. Rosa's voice dropped. The wire transfer authorizations? They're all digitally signed with Frank Marino's credentials. Frank's stealing from me.
Maybe.
Or someone's using his credentials to make it look like Frank's stealing from you. Rosa pulled out another document. A personnel file. Frank Marino started working for you 6 months ago, right when these phantom purchases began. His resume says he managed a garage in Detroit for 10 years before that. I verified his employment history personally. Did you call his references, or did your HR person? Giovanni's jaw tightened. My HR person? Who hired your HR person? My consigliera, Vincent. Giovanni stood up and walked to the window. Vincent Calabrese had been with him for 15 years. Loyal, careful, smart. You think Vincent's compromised? I think someone very smart is setting up a trail of evidence that leads to Frank Marino, who got his job through someone in your organization, who's stealing money using vendor names that can't be easily verified. Rosa stood up and joined him at the window. It's a shell game, Mr. Russo. Every time you lift one shell, you find another shell underneath. And I think that's the point. Keep you chasing your own people while someone else makes their real move. Giovanni turned to look at her. What real move? I don't know yet. But $200,000 isn't enough money for the Marinellis to risk war with you. The tracking devices alone cost more than that to develop and install. They're spending money to make this operation work, not stealing it from you. Rosa returned to the table and pulled out a map of the United States marked with colored pins. So I started thinking, what if the money isn't the goal? What if it's just noise? She pointed to the map. Your 12 exported cars went to 6 different buyers across 3 countries. But before they shipped internationally, they all moved through the same domestic port, Baltimore. Every single one spent between 3 to 7 days in a warehouse owned by Atlantic Logistics.
Giovanni studied the map.
Atlantic Logistics is a subsidiary company I use for temporary storage. It's clean, been working with them for years. Who recommended them to you? Giovanni's mind raced back. Vincent. He said they offered better rates than our previous contractor. When did you start using them? 6 months ago. Rosa let that sink in. Same timeline as Frank Marino. Same timeline as the Phantom purchases. Same timeline as the tracking devices. She grabbed her legal pad and flipped to a page covered in her handwriting. I looked up Atlantic Logistics. It's owned by a holding company called Chesapeake Maritime, LLC. Chesapeake Maritime is owned by another shell company in Delaware. That company is owned by a trust in the Cayman Islands. I hit a wall there. Couldn't trace it further without legal subpoenas. But you have a theory. The Marinellis own Atlantic Logistics. Or at least, they control it somehow. Every car you export sits in their warehouse for a week before shipping overseas. They have complete access. They can photograph it, document it, copy every serial number and modification. Rosa's eyes were intense. Mr. Russo, what if they're not planning to steal your cars? What if they're building a case? The words hit Giovanni, like a punch. Federal case. Think about it. They track your vehicles, document every sale, prove a pattern of high-value exports. Meanwhile, they create a paper trail showing financial irregularities in your organization, phantom purchases, money laundering through fake vendors. They even have a fall guy ready in Frank Marino, who can testify that he was just following orders from you. Giovanni's hands clenched into fists. They're setting me up for a RICO prosecution. Or they're giving the FBI everything they need to get a warrant. Once federal agents raid your operation, the Marinellis swoop in and take over your territory while you're fighting legal battles. Rosa's voice was grim. You'd be looking at 20 years in prison, Mr. Russo. Your whole empire would collapse. Giovanni moved to his desk and poured himself a whiskey despite the early hour. His mind was racing through scenarios, contingencies, countermoves. The Marinellis weren't just attacking his business. They were trying to end him permanently. How confident are you in this theory? He asked. 70%. Maybe 80%. The pieces fit too perfectly to be coincidence. Rosa joined him at the desk. But I can't prove it without accessing those shell companies, and I don't have the resources for that. I do. Giovanni pulled out his phone and dialed.
Sal?
I need you to trace a company for me.
Chesapeake Maritime LLC.
I want to know every board member, every transaction, every connection to the Marinelli family. I don't care what it costs or who you have to bribe. He paused. And Sal? Do it off the books. Don't use our normal investigators. I don't know who I can trust right now. He hung up and looked at Rosa. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, part fear, part determination, part something else. What? Giovanni asked. You're really going to take on the Marinellis and possibly the FBI? I don't have a choice. They made the first move. Now I have to respond. Rosa bit her lip. Mr. Russo, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Ask, are you guilty? Of the things they might accuse you of? Money laundering, illegal exports, organized crime. She held his gaze. Because if I'm helping you cover up actual crimes, I need to know what I'm getting into. It was a brave question. Most people in his world never asked directly, they just assumed and looked the other way. Giovanni set down his glass. I export luxury cars to wealthy buyers. Sometimes those buyers have questionable backgrounds. Sometimes the money they pay me has traveled through questionable channels. But I don't launder drug money, I don't traffic weapons, and I don't kill people unless they try to kill me first. He moved closer. Am I a saint?
No.
Am I guilty of everything the Marinellis are planning to accuse me of? Also no. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's where most people live.
Rosa nodded slowly.
Okay. Okay, you believe me? Or, okay, you're still helping? Both, she crossed her arms. My father used to say there's a difference between breaking rules and breaking people. You might break rules, Mr. Russo, but you haven't broken me or my family. The Marinellis tried to. So, until this is over, I'm on your side. Giovanni felt something shift in his chest. Respect, gratitude, something dangerously close to trust. Then let's get back to work. Because if the Marinellis are building a federal case, we need to dismantle it before they can file. And we need to do it without anyone knowing we're onto them. Rosa picked up her legal pad. Where do we start? With the warehouse. If Atlantic Logistics is the key, we need to know exactly what they're doing with my cars before they ship. Giovanni pulled out a map of Baltimore. Time for a field trip. Rosa's eyes widened. You want me to go to Baltimore with you? You're the one who found the connection. You're the one who knows what to look for. Giovanni folded the map. Besides, I need someone I can trust watching my back. My own people might be compromised, but you're a ghost to the Marinellis. They don't know you exist. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. Pack light. Giovanni headed for the door, then stopped.
Rosa?
You did good work here. Better than good. You just might have saved my life. Rosa allowed herself a small smile. Don't thank me yet, Mr. Russo. We still have to prove it. The drive to Baltimore took 7 hours. Giovanni insisted on driving himself, no chauffeur, no security detail, just him and Rosa, in an unmarked sedan borrowed from a friend who owed him favors. They left at dawn, the Chicago skyline disappearing in the rearview mirror as they headed east through Indiana and Ohio. Rosa spent the first hour in silence, watching the landscape blur past her window. She'd never been alone with Giovanni for this long, never been outside Chicago with him. The intimacy of the small space, the scent of his cologne, the classical music playing softly, the way he drove with one hand relaxed on the wheel, made her hyper-aware of every breath. You're quiet, Giovanni said as they crossed into Pennsylvania. Just thinking. About. Rosa turned to look at him. In the morning light, he looked older than his 52 years. Lines etched deep around his eyes, gray threading through his dark hair. But there was something solid about him, dependable. About how I went from cleaning your house to investigating federal conspiracies in less than a week. Giovanni's mouth quirked. Life moves fast when you're paying attention. Is it always like this in your world? This constant chess game?
Yes.
Except in chess, you see all the pieces. In my world, half of them are hidden, and some of them switch sides mid-game. He merged onto I-76, heading toward the Allegheny Mountains. You get used to it or you get dead. That's comforting. I'm not here to comfort you, Rosa. I'm here to teach you how to survive. They stopped for lunch at a diner outside Pittsburgh, a greasy spoon with checkered floors and waitresses who called everyone Han. Giovanni ordered coffee and a burger. Rosa got soup, her stomach too knotted to handle anything heavier. Tell me about your brother, Giovanni said while they waited for food. Rosa stirred her water with a straw.
Why?
Because I'm trusting him with a position in my organization once this is over. I should know more than what's in his file. Rosa considered this. Carlos is the good one. Always has been. When our father died, Carlos was 16. Could have gone either way, you know. Joined a gang, started dealing, done what a lot of kids in our neighborhood did. But he didn't. He worked at a body shop after school, learned mechanics from scratch, saved money for community college. That's discipline. That's fear, Rosa corrected. He watched our father work himself to death trying to keep the restaurant open. Watched the stress eat through him until his heart gave out at 49. Carlos swore he'd never let that happen to our family again. So he became the responsible one. The one who never takes risks, never breaks rules, never questions authority. Until Frank Marino asked him to install unauthorized tracking devices.
Exactly.
That's how I knew he was telling the truth about being framed. Carlos wouldn't risk his job over principle. He'd just do what he was told and cash his paycheck. The fact that he refused means something was deeply wrong. Rosa's voice softened. He called me that night, crying. Said he felt like he'd failed us. I told him he did the right thing. 2 days later, he was fired. The food arrived. Giovanni ate methodically, chewing each bite 30 times like he was rationing military supplies. Rosa picked at her soup. You carry a lot, Giovanni observed. What do you mean? Your father, your mother, your brother. You hold them all up. Who holds you up? Rosa's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. I don't need holding up. Everyone needs holding up, Rosa. People who say they don't are just better at hiding the weight. Giovanni wiped his mouth with a napkin. My wife used to tell me that. Before she left. Rosa hadn't known he was married. The personnel files didn't mention a wife. What happened? She got tired of the chess game. Tired of not knowing if I'd come home. Tired of the danger. Tired of being married to a man who kept secrets for a living. Giovanni's voice was matter-of-fact, but Rosa heard the old pain underneath. She asked me to choose her or the business. I chose the business. She moved to Seattle, remarried a software engineer. Last I heard, she's happy. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'd make the same choice again. He met Rosa's eyes. That's the thing about this life. It doesn't leave room for normal. You're either all in or you're out. There's no middle ground. Rosa set down her spoon. Is that a warning? It's context. You're getting deeper into my world, Rosa. Once you cross certain lines, you can't uncross them. People will know you work for me. They'll treat you differently, some with respect, some with fear, some with violence. Your old life, the one where you were just a housekeeper, that's gone now. I know. Do you? Giovanni leaned forward. Because once we prove the Marinellis are setting me up, once we dismantle their operation, there will be retaliation. They'll come after everyone close to me. That includes you now. That includes your family. Rosa felt her chest tighten. Then, why did you bring me into this? Why not keep me out of it, keep me safe? Because safe is an illusion, and you proved you're too smart to believe in illusions. Giovanni's gaze was steady. You found patterns my accountants missed. You traced connections my investigators overlooked. You did in 4 days what my people couldn't do in 6 months. That's not luck, Rosa. That's skill. And I need skill more than I need safe. They sat in silence while the waitress refilled Giovanni's coffee. Outside, trucks rumbled past on the interstate, carrying goods to destinations unknown. Rosa thought about her old life, waking up at 5 a.m., taking 2 buses to Giovanni's mansion, cleaning rooms in silence, going home to her tiny apartment. Safe. Predictable.
Small.
She didn't want it back. Okay, Rosa said finally. Okay, what? Okay, I understand what I'm getting into. I'm not naive, Mr. Russo. I grew up in Little Village. I've seen what men like you can do. I've seen the bodies, the broken families, the neighborhood kids who got swallowed by your world and never came out. She met his eyes. But I've also seen what happens to people with no power, no protection, no way to fight back. My father was one of them. He played by the rules, paid his taxes, trusted the system. And the system let him die bankrupt and broken while men like you got richer. So this is revenge. This is survival. You're giving me a chance to protect my family in a way my father never could. To have actual power instead of just hoping powerful people will be merciful. Rosa's voice was fierce now. So, yes, I understand the risks. Yes, I know I'm crossing lines. And yes, I'm choosing to do it anyway. Giovanni studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
Good.
Then we understand each other. They got back on the road, and the conversation shifted to logistics, the warehouse layout, what they were looking for, how to get in without raising suspicion. But something had changed between them. An unspoken acknowledgement that they were now bound together, for better or worse. As they drove through the mountains, Rosa caught Giovanni glancing at her more than necessary. Not in a predatory way, but something else. Assessment? Curiosity? She couldn't tell. What? She asked finally. You remind me of someone.
Who? Me.
Before I learned to hide it better, Giovanni turned his attention back to the road. You still have fire. Most people in my world, the fire goes out. They become machines, efficient, cold, predictable.
But you?
You're angry. That's good. Anger keeps you sharp. I'm not angry, Rosa protested. Yes, you are. You're furious at a world that took your father, that's taking your mother, that tried to take your brother. You're angry at me for being part of the system that crushes people like your family. But you're smart enough to know that the only way to change the game is to learn how to play it. Giovanni smiled slightly. That's exactly how I felt at 25. Like the whole world needed burning down, and I was going to be the one holding the match. Rosa didn't deny it. Did you burn it down? Parts of it. Other parts burned me instead. That's how it goes. He took an exit toward Maryland. But the fire never goes out completely. It just learns to burn quieter. They reached Baltimore as the sun was setting, the harbor glowing orange in the dying light. Giovanni drove past the tourist areas, through industrial zones, until they reached a sprawling complex of warehouses near the shipping docks. Atlantic Logistics. Giovanni parked 3 blocks away, killing the engine. We go in on foot. Just 2 people out for an evening walk, curious about the waterfront. Nothing suspicious. Rosa's heart was pounding. What if someone recognizes you? They won't. The Marinellis don't know I'm coming, and my own people think I'm in Chicago handling other business. Giovanni pulled 2 baseball caps from the back seat. But just in case, we're tourists now. You're my girlfriend. We're visiting the city. We got lost looking for a restaurant. Rosa took the cap, her cheeks flushing at girlfriend. Cover story? The best lies are simple. Stick close, follow my lead, and if anything goes wrong, run. Don't try to help me. Don't try to be a hero. Just run and call Sal. He'll get you home safe. What about you? Giovanni's smile was grim. I've been getting myself out of trouble for 30 years, Rosa. I'll be fine. They stepped out into the Baltimore evening, just 2 shadows walking toward the truth. The Atlantic Logistics warehouse was bigger than Rosa had imagined. 3 massive buildings connected by covered walkways, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Security cameras swept the perimeter in lazy arcs. A single guard sat in a booth at the main gate, absorbed in his phone. Giovanni and Rosa walked past casually, arm in arm like a couple enjoying the harbor breeze. To anyone watching, they were harmless, middle-aged man and younger woman, dressed in casual clothes, taking in the industrial scenery. Camera at 2 o'clock, Giovanni murmured. Don't look directly at it. Rosa kept her eyes forward, but her peripheral vision caught the lens rotating. How do we get inside? We don't. Not tonight. Giovanni guided her around the corner, out of the camera's range. First, we observe. Map the security patterns, identify weak points, understand the rotation schedule. They found a loading dock across the street, abandoned for the night, and settled into the shadows. Giovanni pulled out a small pair of binoculars and began studying the warehouse. Rosa watched him work, noting the professional efficiency. This wasn't his first surveillance operation. 3 guards visible, Giovanni said quietly. 1 at the gate, to patrolling the perimeter. Cameras cover the main entrances, but there's a blind spot near the south loading bay. He handed her the binoculars. Look at building 2, third window from the left. Rosa focused the lenses. Through the grimy window, she could see into an office. Computer monitors glowed blue in the darkness, and filing cabinets lined the walls. What am I looking at? Movement. Someone's working late. Rosa adjusted the focus and saw him, a man in shirt sleeves, pacing while talking on a phone. Even from this distance, she could see his agitation. He looked stressed. Or scared. Giovanni took the binoculars back. That's interesting. They watched for another hour as darkness settled completely over the harbor. The guard changed shifts at 8 p.m. A delivery truck arrived at 8:30, was inspected, and drove through. At 9:15, the stressed man from the office emerged, climbed into a BMW, and peeled out of the parking lot like something was chasing him.
He's running, Rosa said.
Or reporting. Giovanni lowered the binoculars and pulled out his phone, snapping photos of the license plate as the BMW passed under a streetlight. Sal can trace that. Rosa's burner phone buzzed in her pocket, the one Giovanni had given her for emergencies. She pulled it out and felt her blood turn cold. Unknown number. We have your brother. If you want him alive, bring Russo's shipping schedules to Pier 47. Midnight. Come alone or Carlos dies. Her hands started shaking. What is it? Giovanni's voice was sharp. Rosa couldn't speak. She just handed him the phone. Giovanni read the message, his face going hard as stone. When did you last talk to Carlos? This morning. Marco had him at a safe house in Aurora. He said. Rosa's voice cracked. He said Carlos was safe. He promised. Giovanni was already dialing.
Marco?
It's me. Check on the package. Now he waited, his jaw clenched. What do you mean he's not there? When did he leave? A pause.
Jesus Christ.
Find him. Track his phone, check traffic cameras, I don't care. Find him now. He hung up and turned to Rosa, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. This is a trap. They're using Carlos to draw you out, to get leverage over me. We're not playing along. They have my brother. Rosa's voice rose, panic breaking through. We have to. We have to think. Giovanni's voice was steel. The Marinellis don't know you exist. They shouldn't even know about Carlos or that he's connected to me. The only way they could know is if someone in my organization told them. Rosa felt sick.
Marco?
Maybe. Or someone watching Marco. Either way, they've been tracking our moves. Giovanni pulled her deeper into the shadows as a car drove past. Which means they know we're in Baltimore. They know we're close to exposing their operation. So they grabbed Carlos to force our hand. Then what do? We can't just leave him. Giovanni's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his expression darkened further. Marco found Carlos's phone. It was dumped in a trash can 3 blocks from the safe house. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. Rosa's mind was racing. Carlos wouldn't just leave. He's too scared, too careful. Unless someone he trusted told him to, Giovanni looked back at the warehouse. Someone with authority. Someone who could convince him it was for his own safety.
Who?
I don't know yet. But we're going to find out. Giovanni pulled out the burner phone and typed a response to the threatening message. How do I know he's alive? The response came 30 seconds later, a photo of Carlos, bound to a chair in what looked like a shipping container. His face was bruised, his left eye swollen shut. He was holding today's newspaper. Rosa's knees nearly gave out. Giovanni caught her, held her steady. Breathe, he commanded. Falling apart won't help him. We have to give them what they want. They don't want shipping schedules. They want me exposed, panicked, making mistakes. They want me to walk into their trap so they can eliminate both of us and blame it on a business deal gone wrong. Giovanni's mind was clearly racing through scenarios. But they made one mistake. What? They showed us where he is. Giovanni zoomed in on the photo, studying the background. See that logo on the container? That's Martinique Shipping. They only operate out of 2 ports on the East Coast, Newark and Baltimore. You think he's here? I know he is. They're not going to transport a hostage across state lines. Too risky, too much exposure. They grabbed him in Chicago, flew him here private, and they're holding him close to their operation. Giovanni was already moving, pulling Rosa with him back toward their car. Which means he's probably in one of these warehouses right now. Rosa's fear transformed into something sharper. Then we get him back. We will. But not by walking into their trap. Giovanni unlocked the car and slid into the driver's seat. We're going to do what they don't expect. We're going in now, while they're waiting for us at Pier 47.
Now?
But the guards, the cameras, will be focused on perimeter security, not internal. They're not expecting an assault on their own warehouse. Giovanni started the engine. I need to make some calls. Get people I trust, really trust, mobilized. This is going to get ugly, Rosa. I don't care. Carlos is my brother. Giovanni looked at her, his expression unreadable. You understand what you're asking for? This isn't detective work anymore. This is violence. People will get hurt. People will probably die. Rosa thought of Carlos's swollen face, his terrified eyes. She thought of her mother, dying of cancer while her children fought for survival. She thought of her father, who'd played by the rules and ended up broken. Then they should have thought of that before they took my brother, Rosa said, her voice cold and clear. Giovanni smiled, not a warm smile, but one of recognition. All right then, let's go to war. He drove them to a cheap motel 10 minutes away and checked in under a fake name. In the room, he made call after call, summoning people Rosa had never heard of. Men with names like Knuckles and the priest specialists he called them. Problem solvers. While Giovanni coordinated, Rosa paced the small room, her mind cycling through worst-case scenarios. What if they were too late? What if Carlos was already dead? What if this was all a distraction from something worse? Rosa, Giovanni's voice cut through her spiral. Come here. She moved to the table where he'd spread out a hand-drawn map of the warehouse complex. My people will be here in 2 hours. We hit them at 11 p.m., 1 hour before their supposed meeting at Pier 47. While they're preparing for us there, we'll be extracting Carlos here.
He pointed to Building 2.
This is where they're holding him. I'm 90% certain based on the photo background and the fact that it's the most secure building. 6 entry points, 2 of which are accessible without triggering alarms if you know what you're doing. Which you do. Which I do, Giovanni met her eyes. But here's the deal. You're not coming inside. You stay in the getaway car with Sal. Once we have Carlos, we move fast.
No heroics, no dilas.
You understand? No, Rosa crossed her arms. I'm coming in. Absolutely not. He's my brother. I'm not sitting in a car while you risk your life for him. Rosa, these are dangerous men with guns. You have no training, no experience. I have motivation. And I have this. Rosa pulled up her shirt slightly, revealing a small handgun tucked into her waistband. Giovanni's eyes widened. Where the hell did you get that? My father's restaurant. He kept it under the register after the 3rd robbery. I've been carrying it since the night you found me at your gate. Rosa's jaw was set. I know how to shoot. My father made sure both his kids knew how to protect themselves. Giovanni stared at her for a long moment, then ran his hand through his hair. You're insane.
I'm committed.
There's a difference. If you come, you follow my orders exactly. No improvisation, no acting on emotion.
Can you do that? Rosa nodded.
Say it. I'll follow your orders exactly. Giovanni looked like he wanted to argue further, but his phone buzzed. He read the message, and his expression shifted. My people are in position early. We move in 30 minutes. Rosa checked her father's gun, ensuring it was loaded. Her hands were steady now, the fear burned away by cold determination. Giovanni watched her, and something in his expression softened. Your brother's lucky to have you. No, Rosa said, sliding the gun back into her waistband. He's unlucky that we live in a world where this is necessary.
But since we do, yeah.
I'm not letting him face it alone. Giovanni nodded once, respect clear in his eyes. Then let's bring him home. 10 minutes before the operation, Rosa's phone buzzed again. Different number, same threat, change of plans. Bring Russo to Pier 47 now. Proof of life expires in 15 minutes. Attached was a new photo, Carlos, beaten worse than before, blood running from his nose. Someone was holding a gun to his head. Rosa's stomach dropped. Giovanni. He was checking his weapon, a matte black pistol he'd pulled from a hidden compartment in the car. When he saw her face, he knew. What now?
She showed him the message.
Giovanni's expression darkened as he studied the photo. They're getting nervous. Pushing up the timeline means they know something's wrong. Or they're going to kill him.
Rosa grabbed his arm.
We don't have 2 hours. We barely have 15 minutes. It's a bluff. They won't kill him until they have what they want. You don't know that. Rosa's voice cracked. Look at his face, Giovanni. They're beating him to prove a point. What if the next photo is him dead? Giovanni pulled away and walked to the window, his jaw working. Outside, 3 black SUVs had pulled into the motel parking lot, his people, armed and ready. But they were positioned for a coordinated assault on the warehouse, not a hasty rescue at a secondary location. Rosa's phone buzzed again. 14 minutes. We have to split up, Rosa said suddenly. Send your people to the warehouse like planned. You and me, we go to Pier 47". That's exactly what they want. The moment we show up, we're targets. Then we don't show up as targets. We show up as bait that bites back. Rosa moved to the table and studied the map. You said they're expecting you panicked and making mistakes. So we give them what they expect. Desperate man trying to save his employee's sister's brother. But we bring backup they can't see. Giovanni turned from the window. You want to walk into a trap knowingly. I want to split their focus. If they're expecting us at Pier 47, they won't have full security at the warehouse. Your team can breach easier, find evidence of the federal case they're building, maybe even locate the tracking device control system. Rosa's words came faster now, her mind racing. Meanwhile, we keep the Marinellis busy at the pier, make them think they're winning. Once your team secures the warehouse, they come to us as backup. That's insane. We'd be outnumbered and outgunned for at least 20 minutes. So we survive for 20 minutes. Rosa met his eyes, her fear crystallizing into something harder. You said no one fires a man under your name without proof. You said you'd help clear Carlos. Well, now I'm asking you to prove it. Not with careful planning or safe strategies, but with the same kind of loyalty you demand from your people. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Giovanni's phone rang. He answered, listening, then said, Change of plans, Sal. I need 3 men at Pier 47 in 10 minutes. Hidden positions, sniper coverage if possible. Everyone else hits the warehouse as scheduled. He paused. Because I'm about to do something stupid, and I need insurance. He hung up and looked at Rosa. You understand what you're asking? If this goes wrong, we both die.
Carlos dies.
And the Marinellis get away with everything. And if we do nothing, Carlos dies anyway, and we lose our only chance to catch them with evidence. Rosa's voice was steady now. All hesitation burned away. You taught me that safe is an illusion. That power comes from taking risks no one expects. So let's take the risk. Giovanni studied her face, the determination, the fire, the absolute refusal to back down. He saw himself in her again, the version of him that still believed in something beyond survival. All right, he said finally. We do it your way. But I'm driving, and you do exactly what I say when we get there. No heroics. No heroics, Rosa agreed. They moved fast. Giovanni briefed his team leaders in the parking lot, terse, efficient instructions for breaching the warehouse and securing evidence. Sal pulled Rosa aside while Giovanni was talking. You sure about this? Sal was a thick-shouldered man in his 50s with sad eyes. Going into a trap with a boss is a good way to get dead. It's a good way to save my brother, Rosa corrected. Your brother ain't worth dying for, sweetheart.
No offense.
Rosa looked at him steadily. If it was your brother, would you stay in the car? Sal was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Point taken. But for what it's worth, you got guts. More than most of the guys who work for Giovanni. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Just try to stay alive long enough for us to pull your asses out of the fire. Giovanni returned, keys in hand. Let's move. The drive to Pier 47 took 8 minutes. Giovanni pushed the sedan hard through Baltimore's streets, running 2 red lights and taking corners tight enough to make Rosa grab the door handle. Her phone kept buzzing with countdown updates. 10 minutes. 8 minutes. 6 minutes. They're playing psychological warfare, Giovanni said, eyes on the road. Making you panic, making you sloppy. It's working. Then don't let it. Fear is useful. It keeps you sharp. But panic gets you killed, he glanced at her. When we get there, you stay behind me. You don't draw your weapon unless I tell you to. You don't engage unless there's no choice. Your job is to identify Carlos and confirm he's alive. My job is everything else. What if they separate us? They won't. I'm their real target. You're just leverage. Giovanni turned onto a road leading to the industrial waterfront. But if something goes wrong, if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no looking back. You get to Sal, and you let him handle it. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. Because if both of us die, there's no one to tell the truth about what the Marinellis did. Someone needs to survive this, Rosa. Someone needs to win. They pulled into Pier 47 with 3 minutes to spare. The pier was a graveyard of rusted shipping containers and abandoned cranes, lit by flickering sodium lights that turned everything sickly yellow. At the far end, near the water, 3 black SUVs were parked in a semicircle, their headlights creating a makeshift arena. Men with guns stood in the shadows. Rosa counted at least 8 of them. That's a lot of firepower for a simple exchange, she whispered. That's because they're not planning an exchange. They're planning an execution. Giovanni reached under his seat and pulled out a Kevlar vest. Put this on. What about you? I'm already wearing one. Put it on, Rosa.
Now.
She struggled into the vest, her hands clumsy with adrenaline. Giovanni checked his weapon one more time, chambered a round, and looked at her. Whatever happens in the next 20 minutes, I want you to know something. What? You were right. About loyalty, about taking risks, about not letting fear make your decisions. His expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. You remind me why I got into this business in the first place. Not for money or power, but because I wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. I'd forgotten that. So, thank you. Rosa's throat tightened. Don't talk like we're about to die. I'm talking like we're about to fight. There's a difference, Giovanni smiled grimly. Ready. Rosa checked her father's gun one more time, feeling its weight. Ready. They stepped out of the car. The men in the shadows moved forward, forming a corridor toward the center of the arena. At the far end, illuminated by headlights, Carlos sat tied to a chair, barely conscious, his face a mask of blood and bruises. Standing behind him, gun pressed to Carlos's head, was a man in an expensive suit. Even from a distance, Rosa could see his cold smile. Mr. Russo, the man called out, his voice carrying across the pier. So glad you could make it. And you brought the girl. How touching. Giovanni walked forward slowly, his hands visible but not raised. Rosa stayed slightly behind him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through the vest. Let's talk about this, Giovanni said calmly. You want something. I want something. We're all businessmen here. The man laughed. Oh, Giovanni. We're way past talking. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed across the water.
Rosa screamed.
But Carlos was still alive. The bullet had hit the container behind him, inches from his head. A warning shot. Next one's real, the man said. Unless you give me what I want you, on your knees, admitting to federal agents that you've been running an illegal export operation. We've got them waiting in those containers, recording everything. You confess, you go to prison, and maybe, the girl and her brother walk away. Giovanni's hand moved toward his weapon. 20 guns clicked in the darkness. I wouldn't, the man said pleasantly. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. So, what's it going to be, Giovanni? Your freedom or their lives? Rosa looked at Carlos, broken, bleeding, barely conscious. She looked at Giovanni, tense, calculating, trapped. And she made a choice. She stepped forward, past Giovanni, into the light. Stop, Rosa said, her voice carrying across the pier. I have what you really want. The man's smile widened. And what's that, sweetheart? Rosa pulled out a flash drive from her pocket, the one containing all her research, all the evidence she'd compiled on the Marinellis operation. The truth, she said. About who's really stealing from Giovanni Russo. About Atlantic Logistics and Chesapeake Maritime. About every phantom purchase, every tracking device, every piece of your federal setup. She held up the flash drive. I've documented everything. And if anything happens to my brother or Giovanni, this goes to every newspaper, every FBI office, and every one of Giovanni's competitors. Your whole operation gets exposed. The man's smile faltered. Giovanni grabbed Rosa's arm, his voice low and furious. What are you doing? Changing the game, Rosa whispered back. Then louder to the man. So here's the new deal. You let Carlos go. You let us walk away. And maybe, I don't burn your entire organization to the ground. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then the man started laughing. Oh, you've got fire, girl. I like that, his expression hardened. But you're bluffing. That flash drive is empty, or it's got shopping lists, or... Rosa threw the flash drive. It landed at his feet. Check it, she said. I'll wait. The man in the suit gestured to one of his men, who picked up the flash drive and plugged it into a laptop balanced on a container. Rosa held her breath. The drive wasn't empty. She'd loaded it with every document she'd analyzed, every connection she'd traced, every piece of evidence pointing to the Marinellis federal setup. But would it be enough to make them hesitate? The gunman scrolled through files, his expression shifting from skeptical to concerned. He whispered something to the man in the suit. The smile vanished from the man's face. You little bitch, he said softly. You've been busy. Very busy, Rosa said, forcing confidence into her voice. And that's just one copy. I've got backups sent to people you'll never find. So, if you kill us, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering when it all comes crashing down. It was a complete lie. There were no backups, no network of people waiting to expose the truth. But Rosa had learned something from Giovanni. The best weapon in a negotiation was the threat you didn't have to prove. The man studied her, calculating. Then he looked at Giovanni. She really is something, isn't she? No wonder you kept her close. Let the brother go, Giovanni said, his voice hard. You've got bigger problems now than one mechanic. Oh, I don't think so. The man pulled back the hammer on his gun, pressing it harder against Carlos's head. Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to give me every copy of that research. Then you're going to get on your knees and make your confession. And maybe, if I'm feeling generous, I'll let the girl watch her brother die quickly instead of slowly. Rosa's hand moved toward her gun. Don't, Giovanni warned quietly. Such good advice, the man said. Listen to your boss, sweetheart. He's kept himself alive this long by knowing when he's... The explosion cut him off. A massive fireball erupted from the warehouse complex half a mile away, lighting up the night sky. The shockwave followed seconds later, rattling the shipping containers and making everyone on the pier instinctively duck. In that moment of chaos, 3 things happened simultaneously. Giovanni drew his weapon and fired twice, both shots hitting the man in the suit's center mass, dropping him before he could pull the trigger on Carlos. Rosa lunged forward, pulling her father's gun and firing at the nearest gunman. Her shot went wide, but it made him dive for cover instead of shooting. And from the darkness beyond the headlights, Giovanni's hidden snipers opened fire. The pier erupted into violence. Gunfire cracked from every direction. Men shouted, dove behind containers, returned fire at shadows. Giovanni grabbed Rosa and pulled her down behind a forklift, bullets sparking off metal around them. Stay down, Giovanni shouted over the chaos. Carlos. Rosa tried to break free, but Giovanni held her firm. Sal's people are getting him. You go out there now, you're dead. Through the smoke and muzzle flashes, Rosa saw figures moving toward Carlos, men in dark tactical gear, not Marinelli soldiers. One of them cut Carlos's bonds while two others laid down covering fire. They dragged Carlos toward the water's edge, toward a boat Rosa hadn't seen in the darkness. They're getting him out by water, Giovanni said, reading her thoughts. Safer than trying to drive through this. A bullet struck the forklift inches from Rosa's head. Giovanni returned fire, his shots precise and controlled. 3 rounds, 3 different directions. One of the Marinelli gunmen went down, clutching his leg. How many are there?
Rosa shouted.
Too many. Giovanni ejected his empty magazine and slammed in a fresh one. We need to move. When I say go, you run for that crane, see it? 20 yards straight ahead. Don't stop, don't look back. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Ready? Go. Rosa ran. Her legs pumped, the Kevlar vest bouncing against her chest, her father's gun clutched in both hands. Bullets kicked up concrete dust around her feet. Someone shouted in Italian. A muzzle flashed to her left. She fired blindly toward it, not aiming, just creating chaos. She reached the crane and slammed against it, gasping. Giovanni arrived 2 seconds later, breathing hard but moving with practiced efficiency. You hit, he asked.
No.
You.
Grazed.
Nothing serious. Giovanni peered around the crane. The Marinelli forces were regrouping, realizing they'd been ambushed. But they were professionals, they weren't running, they were adapting. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they coordinate a proper assault. Rosa's phone buzzed. She pulled it out with shaking hands, a text from an unknown number. Package secure. Heading to safe point.
Get out now.
They have Carlos, Rosa said, relief flooding through her. He's safe. Then we leave. Now, Giovanni pointed to a gap in the containers leading back toward the parking area. We move fast and quiet. Save your ammunition. Only shoot if you have to. They moved through the maze of shipping containers, Giovanni leading with his weapon up and ready. Rosa stayed close, her heart still hammering, adrenaline making everything hyperreal, the smell of gunpowder, the distant sirens approaching, the crunch of broken glass under her feet. They were almost to the parking area when a figure stepped out from behind a container. Frank Marino. He looked terrified, his shirt soaked with sweat, a small pistol trembling in his hands. Mr. Russo, I'm sorry, I didn't know. They said they'd kill my sister if I didn't. Drop the gun, Frank, Giovanni said calmly. I can't. They're everywhere. They'll kill me for failing. Frank's gun swung toward Rosa. But if I bring them the girl with all the evidence. Giovanni fired once. Frank dropped, the gun clattering from his hand. He clutched his shoulder, screaming. Giovanni walked past him, without stopping. Shoulder wound.
He'll live.
Come on. Rosa hesitated, looking at Frank writhing on the ground. Part of her felt pity. He was just another victim of the Marinellis manipulation. But another part, the part that had seen Carlos beaten and bloody, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She stepped over Frank and kept moving. They reached the sedan, and Giovanni gunned the engine before Rosa even had her door closed. Tires squealed as they peeled out of the parking lot, leaving the chaos of Pier 47 behind. In the rearview mirror, Rosa could see police lights converging on the scene. Will your people get out? She asked. They're ghosts. They were never there. Giovanni navigated through side streets, putting distance between them and the pier. Professional operators know how to disappear. The police will find Marinelli soldiers, some bodies, a lot of questions. But no evidence pointing back to us. What about Frank? Frank will tell them whatever he thinks will save his life. But without the man in the suit to corroborate his story, and trust me, that man is very dead, he's just a raving manager with a gunshot wound and a story nobody will believe. Rosa's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, Carlos on a boat, being tended to by a medic. His face was still a mess, but his eyes were open, and he was giving a weak thumbs up. Rosa started crying. Not delicate tears, but huge, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. All the fear, all the adrenaline, all the impossible tension of the past week crashed over her at once. Giovanni pulled into an empty parking garage and stopped the car. He didn't tell her to stop crying or to pull herself together. He just sat there, one hand on the wheel, giving her space to break. After 5 minutes, Rosa wiped her eyes with her sleeve.
Sorry.
Don't be. You earned it. Giovanni pulled out his phone and made a call. Sal? Status.
He listened, nodding. Good.
Take him to the Oak Street location. Full medical team. Around-the-clock security. Nobody gets near him without my authorization. Another pause. Yeah, she's fine. Tougher than she looks. He glanced at Rosa with something like pride. We'll be there in an hour. He hung up and looked at Rosa properly. Your brother's going to make a full recovery. Broken ribs, concussion, some nasty bruises. But nothing permanent. Thank you, Rosa whispered. For everything. For believing me. For risking your life. For... Stop. Giovanni's voice was gentle but firm. You saved us back there. That play with the flash drive, calling their bluff, buying time for my people to get Carlos out, that was smart thinking under pressure. Most people freeze. You adapted. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. Giovanni started the car again. Come on. Let's go see your brother. As they drove through the Baltimore night toward whatever came next, Rosa realized something had fundamentally changed. She wasn't Giovanni's maid anymore. She wasn't even just his analyst. She was his partner. And together, they'd just declared war on one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast. The question was, what would they do when the Marinellis declared war back? They reached the Oak Street safe house at 2 a.m. It was an unassuming brownstone in a quiet Baltimore neighborhood, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and curtains stayed closed. Sal met them at the door, his expression grim but satisfied. Package is stable. Doc says he'll be fine in a week or two. Tough kid, didn't cry once while they set his ribs. Rosa pushed past him, following the sound of voices to a back bedroom. Carlos lay in a hospital bed that looked absurdly out of place in the modest room, his torso wrapped in bandages, his face cleaned up but still swollen. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears.
Rosa.
She was at his side instantly, gripping his hand.
Don't talk.
Just rest. You're safe now.
I'm sorry.
I should have stayed put, but Marco said you needed me, that it was urgent. Carlos's voice cracked. I didn't know it was a trap until they grabbed me outside. Giovanni appeared in the doorway. Marco said that. Carlos nodded weakly. He called, said Rosa was in trouble at some warehouse in Baltimore, that I needed to come identify some parts or something. It didn't make sense, but he said it was life or death, so he trailed off, seeing Giovanni's expression. Marco set me up. Marco's been working for the Marinellis for at least 3 months, Giovanni said flatly. Probably longer. He's the one who recommended Atlantic Logistics. He's the one who vetted Frank Marino. And he's the one who gave them access to our entire security network. Rosa felt cold fury settle in her chest. Where is he now? That's what we're about to find out. Giovanni pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. Rosa heard him making calls, his voice low and dangerous. When he returned, his expression was stone. My people have him. He's being brought to Chicago as we speak. What happens to him? Carlos asked. Nothing you need to worry about, Giovanni said, but his tone made it clear that Marco's future was measured in hours, not years. Rosa squeezed Carlos's hand. Get some rest. I'll be here when you wake up. Where are you going? To finish what we started. Giovanni led Rosa to a study on the second floor where Sal had set up a command center, laptops displaying security feeds, phones connecting to various contacts, a map of Chicago marked with red pins. The warehouse team got everything, Sal said, pulling up files on his computer. Documents, hard drives, even a digital recording system they were using to monitor your shipments. The Marinellis were building a comprehensive case, not just for the feds, but for their own takeover. They wanted every detail of your operation so they could slide right in once you were arrested. Giovanni studied the screen. How much evidence? Enough to bury them. Financial records showing the Marinellis funded Atlantic Logistics specifically to infiltrate your operation. Communications between Marco and their underboss, a guy named Vincent Marinelli. No relation to me, Sal added quickly. Detailed plans for how they distribute your territory once you are gone. Even contingency plans for if you didn't take the bait.
Which we didn't, Rosa said.
Which you didn't,
Sal agreed.
And now they're scrambling. Police found 4 dead bodies at Pier 47, including Antonio Marinelli, the boss's nephew. That's a major loss for them, both strategically and personally. They're going to retaliate hard. Giovanni was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he smiled, a cold, calculating smile that reminded Rosa exactly who she was dealing with. Good. Let them come angry. Angry people make mistakes. What's the play?
Sal asked.
We don't give them time to regroup. We hit them tonight. While they're still reeling, Giovanni pulled out his phone and started making calls. I need every favor I'm owed. Every connection I have. Legal fronts, financial pressure, strategic leaks to the right agencies. We're going to dismantle the Marinelli operation piece by piece. Over the next 6 hours, Rosa watched Giovanni orchestrate a corporate massacre. First, he contacted a judge he'd helped elect. Suddenly, warrant appeared for Atlantic Logistics, citing financial irregularities and customs fraud. Federal agents raided the warehouse complex at dawn, seizing documents and arresting managers. Second, he called in markers with 3 different banks. By noon, every Marinelli front company found their lines of credit frozen, their accounts under investigation, their assets locked pending audits. Third, he leaked information to competing crime families, carefully edited versions of the Marinelli plans that made it look like they'd been planning to move on everyone's territory, not just Giovanni's. Within hours, the Marinellis found themselves surrounded by enemies on all sides. It's beautiful, Rosa said, watching it unfold from the safe house. You're destroying them without firing a shot. Violence is easy, Giovanni said. Any idiot with a gun can start a war. Real power is making your enemies destroy themselves. He pulled up a news feed showing FBI agents carrying boxes out of Atlantic Logistics. By night, the Marinellis will be fighting fires on 6 different fronts. They won't have time or resources to come after us. What about Marco? Giovanni's expression hardened. Marco confessed everything. Names, dates, payments. He thought cooperating would save him. Will it? He'll live. I'm not in the murder business unless I have to be. But he'll spend the next 20 years in a federal prison after I hand him and his testimony to the right prosecutor. The FBI will love him. He's a direct link between the Marinellis and multiple criminal enterprises. Rosa thought about this. You're using him to take down the whole family. I'm using him to end a war before it starts. The Marinellis wanted to put me in prison?
Fine.
I'll put them there instead. Giovanni closed his laptop. By the end of the week, Vincent Marinelli and his top lieutenants will be in federal custody. Their operations will collapse. Their territory will be absorbed by other families. And they'll have no one to blame but themselves for being too ambitious. Sal whistled low. Boss, this is some next-level chess. I learned a long time ago, the best way to win a war is to make sure it never becomes a war. Giovanni stood and stretched. Now we go home. We've been in Baltimore long enough. They drove back to Chicago that afternoon, leaving Carlos in Sal's care with instructions to bring him home once he was strong enough to travel. Rosa slept in the passenger seat, exhausted beyond measure. She woke up as they crossed into Illinois, the Chicago skyline visible in the distance. Almost home, Giovanni said softly. Rosa looked at him. In the afternoon light, he looked tired but satisfied. What happens now? Now? We rebuild. We clean house, find everyone in my organization who is compromised, and replace them with people we can trust. We restructure the export business to prevent this from happening again. We make sure Carlos gets his job back with a public apology and a promotion. Giovanni glanced at her. And we give you a proper position. No more pretending you're just a maid. What kind of position? Director of Internal Operations. You'll oversee all financial records, vet all major hires, audit every department. Basically, you'll be my internal watchdog, the person who makes sure no one ever infiltrates my business again. Rosa was quiet, processing this. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of responsibility. But you've proven you can handle it. Giovanni merged onto the highway leading into the city. The job pays $200,000 a year, full benefits, security detail if you want it. Your mother gets moved to the best cancer treatment facility in Chicago with all expenses covered. Carlos gets his mechanic job back at triple his old salary, plus I'm making him head of quality control for the garage. Why are you doing all this? Giovanni was silent for a long moment. Because you were right. That night at the gate, you said I told you no one under my name would be punished without proof. You held me to that promise when most people would have just taken my money and disappeared. You showed me that integrity still matters. Even in this business, he looked at her. I'd forgotten that. You reminded me. Rosa felt tears threatening again. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll take the job, help me build something better than what I had. Something that actually deserves the loyalty I demand from people. Rosa thought about her father, working himself to death trying to play by rules that didn't protect him. She thought about Carlos, nearly killed because he refused to break his principles. She thought about her mother, dying because they couldn't afford proper care. Yes, she said finally. I'll take the job. Giovanni smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. Good. Then let's go home and start fixing things. They drove into Chicago as the sun set, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson. Rosa watched the skyline grow closer and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd walked through fire and come out stronger. Whatever came next, she was ready. 1 week later, Giovanni Russo stood before a room full of reporters. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House Hotel was packed. Local news, national outlets, business journalists, even a crew from 60 Minutes. Camera flashes popped like fireworks as Giovanni adjusted the microphone at the podium, Rosa standing slightly behind him in a navy suit that Mrs. Chun had insisted she buy for the occasion. Rosa's heart hammered against her ribs. This was Giovanni's idea, a public announcement to reshape his image, to get ahead of the narrative before the Marinelli prosecutions became front-page news. But standing in front of hundreds of people, knowing millions more would watch the broadcast, made her feel exposed in a way even the gunfight at Pier 47 hadn't. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, Giovanni began, his voice steady and commanding. I've called this press conference to announce a major restructuring of Russo Enterprises and to address recent events that have brought unwanted attention to my business operations. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Giovanni raised a hand for silence. Many of you know me by reputation, some flattering, some less so. I've spent 30 years building a successful export business, creating jobs, contributing to Chicago's economy. But I've also operated in ways that prioritized profit over transparency, efficiency over ethics. He paused, letting that sink in. That ends today. Rosa watched the reporters lean forward, pens poised. Last week, my organization was infiltrated by individuals with criminal intent. They planted false evidence, manipulated records, and attempted to frame innocent employees for crimes they didn't commit. Thanks to the diligence of my internal audit team, we uncovered this conspiracy and have provided evidence to federal authorities. Several arrests have already been made. More murmurs. Someone shouted a question, but Giovanni talked over them. This infiltration was a wake-up call. It showed me that my organization had grown too insular, too dependent on personal relationships rather than institutional safeguards. So, I'm implementing comprehensive reforms. Giovanni gestured to a screen behind him, where bullet points appeared.
Integrity Restauration Initiative.
Independent third-party auditing of all financial records. Transparent supply chain documentation. employee protection and whistleblower programs, community investment and job training programs, quarterly public reporting on business operations. These reforms will cost money and reduce short-term profits, Giovanni continued. But they'll ensure that Russo Enterprises operates with integrity, that our employees are protected, and that we contribute positively to the community that's supported us for 3 decades. A reporter in the front row raised her hand. Mr. Russo, sources say this infiltration was connected to the Marinelli crime family. Are you confirming that organized crime targeted your business? I'm confirming that individuals with criminal backgrounds attempted to compromise my operations for their own gain. Law enforcement is handling the investigation, and I'm confident justice will be served. Another reporter. But isn't Russo Enterprises itself connected to organized crime? Your father. My father ran a different business in a different era, Giovanni said, his voice sharp. I've spent years distancing myself from that legacy, building legitimate enterprises, paying taxes, employing hundreds of people honestly. Yes, my past isn't perfect. But I'm here today to talk about the future, not relitigate the past. Rosa saw him grip the podium tighter. This was the dangerous moment. If the press smelled weakness, they'd tear him apart. Giovanni took a breath, and his voice softened. I want to introduce someone who embodies the future I'm building. Rosa Alvarez, please step forward. Rosa's stomach dropped. This wasn't in the script they'd rehearsed. Giovanni caught her eye and nodded encouragingly. She stepped to the microphone, acutely aware of every camera lens pointed at her face. This is Rosa Alvarez, Giovanni said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Until recently, she worked as a housekeeper in my home. But when her brother, one of my mechanics, was falsely accused of theft as part of the infiltration scheme, Rosa didn't accept the easy explanation. She investigated. She asked questions. She uncovered evidence that my own security team had missed. The reporters were scribbling furiously now. Rosa didn't have formal training in investigation or accounting. She just had integrity and determination. She refused to let her brother be destroyed by lies. Giovanni's voice grew stronger. That's the kind of person I want working for me. So I've appointed Rosa as Director of Internal Operations for Russo Enterprises. She'll oversee all financial auditing, vet major hires, and ensure that what happened last week never happens again. Rosa found her voice, though it came out shakier than she wanted. Thank you, Mr. Russo. I'm honored by this opportunity and committed to ensuring that Russo Enterprises operates with complete transparency and integrity. A reporter shouted, Ms. Alvarez, how does it feel to go from housekeeper to executive in 1 week? Rosa thought about all the nights spent poring over documents, the terror at Pier 47, Carlos's beaten face, her father's restaurant going under despite doing everything right. It feels like someone finally recognized that working-class people have skills and intelligence that often go unseen because we're not in the right positions to demonstrate them, Rosa said, her voice growing steadier. Mr. Russo gave me a chance when most employers would have just paid me to go away. He trusted me to help fix his organization instead of hiding the problems. That's the kind of leadership I want to help build here. The room erupted with questions, but Giovanni raised his hand. That's all for today. We'll provide detailed documentation of our reforms and answer additional questions through official channels. Thank you. Security ushered them out through a back entrance while reporters still shouted questions. In the private corridor, Rosa leaned against the wall, breathing hard. You didn't tell me I'd have to speak, she said. You did beautifully, Giovanni replied. Sincere, articulate, relatable. The press will love you. Or they'll tear me apart for working with you. Let them try, Giovanni's eyes were fierce. You saved my business, Rosa. You saved lives. Anyone who questions that can answer to me. Sal appeared with a tablet. Boss, you need to see this. It's trending. He showed them social media. Already, clips from the press conference were going viral. Comments ranged from supportive, "This is how you actually give people opportunities," to cynical, "Mob boss uses sob story for PR," to curious, "Who is Rosa Alvarez and how did she really uncover this?" It's working, Sal said. Public opinion is shifting. People are seeing you as a reformer, not just another crime boss. And Rosa's story is resonating. Working-class woman fights corruption and gets rewarded. It's gold. Giovanni nodded, satisfied.
Good.
Now we need to follow through. Rosa, I need you to start the auditing process tomorrow. Full review of every department, every manager, every financial record. If there are more snakes in my organization, I want them found. What about Carlos? Rosa asked. And my mother? Carlos is being discharged today. I'm having him brought to the North Shore garage tomorrow for formal reinstatement ceremony. Press will be there. As for your mother, she's already been transferred to Rush University Medical Center, Oncology Wing. Best doctors in the Midwest. I spoke to the department head personally. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. Stop thanking me. You earned this. All of it. Giovanni checked his watch. Now go home, get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real work, rebuilding everything from the ground up. Rosa nodded and turned to leave, but Giovanni called after her.
Rosa?
She looked back. I meant what I said up there. You fixed more than my business. You fixed my trust in people. His expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. You reminded me what loyalty actually means. That's worth more than any amount of money.
Rosa smiled.
Then I guess we're even. You reminded me that fighting back is possible. She left the hotel and stepped into the Chicago afternoon, where a black car waited to take her home. Her real home now, not the tiny apartment in Little Village, but a secure condo Giovanni had arranged in a building he owned downtown. Protection, he'd said. Insurance against retaliation. As the car pulled into traffic, Rosa looked out at the city, her city, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. She had resources now, power now, a voice that people actually heard. Her father would have been terrified of this life. But Rosa? Rosa was ready to fight. 3 months later. Rosa stood in Giovanni's study, reviewing the quarterly financial reports on her laptop. The Integrity Restoration Initiative was exceeding projections. Independent audits had found and corrected 3 more instances of financial irregularities. Employee satisfaction scores had risen 40%, and legitimate business had increased as clients gained confidence in the reformed organization. The Marinellis were gone. Vincent Marinelli and 8 of his top lieutenants were awaiting trial on federal racketeering charges. Marco had testified before a grand jury, sealing their fate. The family's territory had been absorbed by other organizations, their influence shattered. Giovanni entered the study carrying 2 glasses of wine. Still working? Just finishing the report for the board meeting tomorrow. Rosa closed her laptop and accepted the glass. We're up 12% in legitimate revenue this quarter. The reforms are actually making us more profitable, not less. Turns out honesty can be good business. Giovanni settled into the chair across from her. Who knew?
Rosa smiled.
Over the past 3 months, their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had quite named. Not romantic, the age gap and power dynamic made that complicated, but something deeper than professional.
Partnership. Trust.
Family, maybe. How's your mother?
Giovanni asked.
Good. The new treatment is working. Doctors say she might have years, not months. Rosa's voice caught. She cried when I told her. She thought she'd never see Carlos get married, never meet grandchildren. Now she might. And Carlos. Loving his new position. He called yesterday. They're designing a new quality control system for the garage, something revolutionary. He's thinking of patenting it. Rosa laughed. My brother, the inventor. Who would have thought? Giovanni raised his glass. To second chances. Rosa clinked her glass against his. To second chances. They drank in comfortable silence. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows. Winter was coming early this year. I want to show you something, Giovanni said suddenly. He stood and extended his hand. Come with me. Rosa followed him through the mansion, down the marble stairs, through the foyer with its crystal chandelier. Giovanni grabbed 2 coats from the closet and handed her one. It's cold out. They walked through the grounds, past the fountain with its stone lions, past the manicured gardens now brown with approaching winter. Giovanni led her to the front gate, the same iron fence where he'd found her that rainy night in August. "Remember the spot?" Giovanni asked. Rosa touched the cold metal, remembering. The rain, the desperation, the feeling that her world was ending. "How could I forget? I drove past here tonight, just like I did then. And I thought about how much has changed." Giovanni stood beside her, looking out at the quiet street beyond. "That night, I thought I was doing you a favor. Being charitable. Helping someone less fortunate. You were." "No," Giovanni turned to face her. "You were helping me. You just didn't know it yet." Rosa's breath misted in the cold air. "What do you mean?" "I'd become exactly what everyone accused me of being: cold, calculating, isolated. I trusted no one, cared about nothing except maintaining power. My organization was rotting from the inside because I'd surrounded myself with people who only told me what I wanted to hear." Giovanni's voice was quiet but intense. "Then you showed up, refused to accept the easy story, demanded the truth even when it put you in danger. You forced me to look at my own business honestly for the first time in years. I was just trying to save my brother. You were doing what I'd forgotten how to do, fighting for something that mattered more than money or power. Family, integrity, justice." Giovanni placed his hands on the gate. "This house was built on secrets and fear. People loyal to me because they had no choice, because they were afraid of what would happen if they weren't. That's not loyalty. That's captivity."
Rosa understood.
"And now it feels different. You said it yourself 3 months ago. This house finally feels like it's built on real loyalty. People work for me because they believe in what we're building, because they're treated fairly, because they know someone's actually watching out for them." Giovanni smiled. "You did that, Rosa. You rebuilt my entire organization from the inside out." Rosa felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. "We did it together." "Maybe." Giovanni turned from the gate to face her fully. "But you started it. That night, when you could have begged for money or run away or sold information to my enemies, you came to my gate and waited. You believed I was someone worth believing in, even when I'd stopped believing in myself. I didn't have anywhere else to go. Yes, you did. You had 100 other options. But you chose to trust me." Giovanni's voice was rough with emotion. "Do you know how rare that is? Real trust, not bought or coerced or threatened. Someone who sees exactly who you are, the good and the terrible, and still chooses to stand beside you." Rosa's throat was tight. "Giovanni, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm just saying thank you. For that night. For every day since. For reminding me what I built this empire for in the first place, to protect people, not just profit from them." The gate stood between them and the street, iron and solid. But it didn't feel like a barrier anymore. It felt like a choice. The choice to stay inside these walls, protected and protected by them. The choice to be part of something larger than themselves. "That night, I thought I was saving someone broken," Giovanni said softly, echoing the words from months ago. "Turns out, you were rebuilding me." Rosa looked at the mansion behind them. Lights glowing warm in the windows, smoke rising from chimneys, security quietly patrolling the grounds. It wasn't a fortress anymore. It was a home. "You know what's funny?" Rosa said. "My father always told me to stay away from men like you. Said they destroyed everything they touched." He was right. He was wrong. Rosa turned to Giovanni. "You don't destroy everything. You just needed someone to remind you how to build." Giovanni smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look younger. "So what happens now?"
Now.
Rosa pulled her coat tighter against the cold. "Now we keep building. We make this organization something people are proud to work for. We take care of the people who take care of us. We prove that doing business honestly isn't just possible, it's profitable. Ambitious." "You hired me for my ambition." Giovanni laughed, a genuine sound that echoed across the grounds. "That I did." They stood together at the gate for another moment, watching the street beyond. A car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating them before continuing into the night. Somewhere in the city, life continued. People fighting their own battles, making their own impossible choices, hoping for their own second chances. "Come on," Giovanni said finally. "It's too cold out here, and Mrs. Chen made lasagna. We should eat before it gets cold." They walked back toward the house together, leaving the gate behind. As they climbed the steps, Rosa looked back one last time at the spot where her old life had ended and her new one began. The gate stood solid and unchanging, but everything beyond it had transformed. Giovanni paused at the door, one hand on the ornate handle. "You know, this house has been here for 80 years. My grandfather built it, my father maintained it, I inherited it. But it never felt like home until you started fixing it."
Rosa smiled.
"Buildings don't make homes, Giovanni. People do." "Then I guess this really is home now." He opened the door, warmth and light spilling out into the cold November night. "Welcome home, Rosa." She stepped inside, and the door closed behind them, not shutting the world out, but sealing something precious in. Outside, the mansion lights flickered against the darkness, no longer a fortress of secrets, but a beacon of possibility. A place where a housemaid became an executive, where a crime boss learned integrity, where loyalty meant more than fear. A place where, against all odds, broken people had rebuilt each other into something stronger than they'd ever been alone. And it had all started with one desperate night at an iron gate, when Giovanni Russo found his maid sleeping on the street and discovered she was exactly what he needed to save himself.
The end.